Thanks. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another InIn board meeting. This one is for February 28th, 2018. So we will first start talking about what's going on with Intentional Insights. And we will, well, since we have a small group here tonight, and I suspect it's because the topic of the meeting is how to fundraise for the strategic plan, not that many people want to talk about fundraising. Let's just introduce everyone today. So, as I think all of you know, my name is Gleb Sipursky, and I'm the president and co-founder of Intentional Insights.
I'm Agnes Wishnevkin, and I'm co-founder, vice president of Intentional Insights in Columbus, Ohio. Bentley.
I'm Bentley Davis, board member of Intentional Insights and chair of the Pro-Truth Pledge Central Coordinating Committee.
Cool. Okay. Others?
I'm Gary Monty, and I'm chair of the Business Activism Committee.
Cool. Thank you. And Alex?
Hello. I'm Alex Weisenfels, board member until recently.
We miss you. It's nice to see you.
Okay, cool. So, updates. Let's see. We've had a whole number of things going on, mainly with planning some strategic things. So we are working on developing a number. Oh, hey, Randy is here. Randy, we're just introducing each other. Would you care briefly to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Randy Grine. I'm actually a politician now. Once you run for office, you've got to call yourself a politician. That's the honest thing. I ran for city council here in Bellevue, which is the 4th largest city in the state. I'll be running again in possibly next year. And I'm trying to promote the Pro-Truth Pledge here locally.
Excellent. And you're also the chair of the Pro-Truth Pledge Political Cultivation Committee.
Yes, and a lot of other things. I seem to have gotten myself in on the deep end.
Okay, well, thank you for getting yourself in on the deep end with us. All right. So, we've been doing some planning out for what's going on in the next few months. So the strategic plan will be sent out in the next newsletter for Intentional Insight. I'm sorry, for the Pro-Truth Pledge, which will be coming out in just a couple of days. So you'll see that coming out, and what we've planned for the 2018 elections and the 2020 elections in the US, so which will hopefully be a good template for us expanding the Pro-Truth Pledge internationally as well over time. And so that's something we've been working on extensively internally. We've also been working on quite a bit with the Pro-Truth Pledge, developing our political targeting committee, which I'm running, and the political cultivation committee, which Randy is running. So what we really want to do for the 2018 election is to help get candidates to take the Pro-Truth Pledge and then help them use it effectively to hopefully help truth-oriented candidates get a reputational edge in the election process. So that's what we'd like to accomplish. Now, a really nice recent development is that we have the first US member of Congress who took the Pro-Truth Pledge, and that's Beto O'Rourke. So really glad about that. He's a high-profile member of the US Congress. He is taking on Senator Ted Cruz. So he is competing with Senator Ted Cruz in Texas for election. So that's a pretty high-profile person to get. So
he's competing for election, but he's already in office.
Right. He's already a US congressperson in the House of Representatives, and he's competing for a Senate seat. So that's what's going on there. And we are trying to focus on also getting speaking engagements. So we've got a number of speaking engagements for the Pro-Truth Pledge, and also on media. So one of our big areas of focus has been trying to get media attention for the Pro-Truth Pledge. In fact, something that we're really pleased about is that we've something unexpected happened, that the Daily Caller, which is a very conservative website, it was founded by Tucker Carlson, who's a very prominent right-wing show host. They called us and wanted an interview about a topic, so we gave them an interview, and they just published an article with us, and they didn't misquote us, which was nice. So now that's the highest profile conservative venue in which we've been published, and that's really going to help give us credibility to push back against anyone who says, oh, just the pro-truth pledge is like a liberal thing. So that's really good. So that's been going on, and another nice thing, which I was really pleasantly surprised by, is that we have a group that is taking off unexpectedly in Brazil. So it's actually taking off quite quickly, and so I did not anticipate that would be the next biggest group for the pro-truth pledge, but that looks like that will be the next biggest group for the pro-truth pledge outside the US. So those are just some things that are going on. And yeah, we're also going to be, I'm going to be doing some traveling to speak for the pro-truth pledge in a number of venues. So doing more travel in the near future. Let's see. One other thing that we're doing is trying to improve the way that volunteers engage with the pro-truth pledge. Hi, Kelly. Thank you for coming on. So we've been trying to improve the way that volunteers engage with the pro-truth pledge. And Bentley and Agnes and somebody who's on this phone call, Diego, will be meeting soon to try to improve the website and our general volunteer engagement process. So we're just trying to improve our structure and how we bring volunteers on board, how we get them engaged, and so on. And that has been part of what's been developing, and as well as trying to explore new territories for the pro-truth pledge that we haven't focused on so much before. So with Gary as an example, leading the business activism committee, doing business outreach, and Agnes here leading a committee that's doing some personal outreach to potential high-profile targets. So I think that kind of captures the large majority of what's been going on. And any questions about the pro-truth pledge and the intentional insights and anything that we're doing are welcome.
And we have a new guest. Do we want her to introduce herself? Kelly Croucher.
Just a comment. I've gotten feedback from a couple people that, and maybe this has been discussed before, could we find another term besides fake news? Because the term itself is so inflammatory that in trying to promote the pro-truth pledge by bringing up the term fake news, it's like we put one foot in the grave, because it seems to be such a provocative term now. I got that from two people. I just wanted to pass that along.
I think that's a fair statement. I think that's more of a question of audience. In some cases, we really do want to talk about fake news, as that's what the audience would respond to, a certain type of audience.
No, we have removed fake news off the homepage. So
yes, we did, largely because of the kind of concerns that Gary was voicing. So we previously used to have lies, deceptions, fake news, and stuff like that on the homepage. Now we changed it to misinformation and incivility. So misinformation is a more neutral term that we chose to put on the front page. And thank you for highlighting that, Bentley. So my broader point, my point I was making is that it really does depend on your audience. If you're talking to an audience that's more progressive, they probably would resonate with the term fake news. If you're talking to more of a business audience, maybe you want to use terms like misinformation and incivility. If you're talking to a conservative audience, it might be better to use terms like, Russian trolls and Russian bots, because of negative associations with Russia. So depending, you probably want to focus on the audience when you in targeting your comments. That's my thoughts, and I welcome other people's thoughts. Thank you for sharing yours. Other people, I do welcome your thoughts. Those are my initial thoughts on the question of Gary.
I would add to what Gleb said that I think it's totally the bigger strategy of the pro-truth pledge is to get people to agree about the facts and the kind of the way we find what's truthful and the way we can agree on the facts and kind of start from there. And we have many ways to reach out to people. If so, I mean, to kind of put it simply, like if someone comes to me and says, hey, facts are great, like that's boring, you know. If someone says, do you hate fake news? And I will say, oh my gosh, I hate fake news so much. And you say, I actually take the pro-truth pledge, you can fight fake news. I'm all over it. But not everyone is angry about fake news. People might be upset about Russian bots, or they might be upset about misrepresentations in the media, whether more liberal media, more conservative media, or anywhere. So it's all about how we can appeal to what is important to people. And there's nothing wrong with using different words to connect with different people and get them excited. And that's kind of how products are sold, have been sold all over the world for centuries. And in order for us to be effective, we need to be smart about our messaging and about our marketing, which is essentially what it is. And this kind of thinking has been at the core of Intentional Insights, just, you know, the whole nonprofit running the pro-truth pledge ever since it got launched in 2014. It's all about how we bring people on board. So I think it's totally perfectly fine to use words that connect with the audience. It's not, you know, we don't have to be misleading.
Well, I like the idea of leading with the word civility. I mean,
that's a great word that many people like.
I mean, if there's a guy in the crowd,
exactly. There you go. In the business community,
right?
Totally. Yeah, it's the art of reading your audience and being able to talk about the pro-truth pledge in, you know, a dozen different ways.
Thanks. One other thing, I don't know how many people present, but one of the things that I'm finding from the engagements I've had so far is that sometimes the group, I can take at face value, they showed up to listen and I can present and it goes well. But other times, I've had this happen twice, once with a left-leaning group and once with a right-leaning group. There have been sub-conversations going on in those groups, and what I've realized is backing off and giving a little more time for people to ask questions and maybe pausing to see if someone else is going to pop up in the group. Because I realized with one, I was being used as a conduit for two people to fight with each other.
Oh, fun.
Right. And I really learned. And then when I saw it with both a left and a right group, I realized I'm going to change my style. And I think I'm going to pause a bit more. And especially when someone's asking a question, I'm going to do more active listening and repeat the question back to see what happens. Because specifically with one group, I felt I did active listening back with the question, but two other people in the audience popped up because you could tell they were arguing with the person that asked the first question. So I just want to pass that. You know, if there's anyone new to this, I got burned, so I just wanted to pass that along.
Thank you for the valuable tip.
Seems like it's important to be mindful of the dynamics in the group you're talking to.
Yes.
Cool.
Oh, good comment from Randy Grine that starting with a word of honesty and then following up with technical like verification and retraction. I know honesty works for a lot of people. Hard not to like honesty.
It has been remarkably effective. And that's a nice segue into the possibility of being wrong and how that's not the most horrible thing that will happen in your life.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. Absolutely.
Awesome.
This is an opportunity to learn and grow. Okay. Other thoughts and comments? Questions? I'll count back from 5, and you can just unmute yourself or type if you have any comments or questions or thoughts. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Oh, I have a comment.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this will work as a major aspect, but I guess just something to keep in mind is it may help to also emphasize in a broad sense how much people actually want the same things. Like they want the world to end up in more or less the same way, regardless of whether they can agree on what's actually happening now.
Mhm.
Like I think it's a good way to at least start off on the right foot.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, I think it's good to make sure that people can agree on the facts and say, okay, can we at least agree on the facts? We may disagree about their interpretations, but let's just agree on the facts as a baseline and make sure that we have the similar understanding of the facts. Is that what you're pointing to?
Well, that's definitely also good, like bringing it down to hard facts rather than interpretations of facts, which people call facts, even though they're not necessarily facts. But also just like everyone agrees, like we want as many people as possible to be healthy and safe and free, etc. It's just a matter of disagreeing on how that is supposed to work.
So I would worry a little bit about getting into values, because I think people would disagree on values much more. And it's always, when you talk about values, it's kind of, well, what do you value more? Do you value people feeling good, or do you value human liberty, and so on? So those are going to contradict each other. I think I would much rather prefer that the approach of pledge is not about values at all. It's just about the facts, and how do you get to being as accurate as possible. So I would be a little bit concerned about getting into values conversations.
Well, it's definitely true that we shouldn't be emphasizing differences in how much people value different things, but if we can all agree on, like, all of these things are good, never mind which one's best for now, it's just that goes a long way towards getting people to be willing to trust other people's interpretations of the facts as actual interpretations, and not, I'm trying to mess with the information in order to promote my alien values. I'm trying to deceive everyone. Like, I don't really believe this. Yeah, it's not going to be the whole thing. It's just, I guess, something to be aware of.
Yeah, that makes sense. You definitely want to signal that we all value human autonomy, and we all value social welfare, and people feeling good and so on, having well-being. The conflicts do come when you say, which one do you value more? No taxes at all. Human autonomy.
I think your statement about facts versus values is a good one, because another common behavior I observe is there's a desire to drag the conversation during the Q&A to conflate facts and values, and that, well, when you're talking about facts, what it is there's actually a specific agenda that's being promoted. And I notice there's a bit of a deafness with people that do that. Even when I say, no, it's just, if it's 70 degrees outside, let's just all agree that it's 70. You might think it's too hot, and I might think it's too cold. We're only here to validate it is 70 degrees outside. And people will still continue wanting to push it to, no, you're here to promote some sort of value system. So tell me, what is that value system you're trying to promote? And I've done best when someone in the audience will say, no, he just said he's talking about the fact that it's 70 degrees outside. And it seems to be what works best is if someone in the audience picks up the banner, because it seems to be a bit futile. I don't go back and forth with people anymore because it just kind of falls apart. If they're going to insist that I'm there to talk about values, I'll say, well, I hear what you're saying, but I honestly feel very comfortable that I only want to adjust the reality that if that's a 2-lane road out in front of this building, I'm not going to call it a 3-lane road. And if I mistakenly call it a 3-lane road, I'll come back and I'll correct that. And I think that's the best I can do so far. I don't know if anyone's got any other suggestions. I'd be glad to hear them.
Well, actually, I do have I suppose it's a suggestion. I found that separating values and facts, of course, is important. But what gives the facts value are values. And if you can direct, when you run into that kind of a roadblock, if you can direct the conversation into separating the two, this is a fact, this is a value. The values give meaning to the facts and allow us to make choices. They're what direct our preferences. What's insane is to have values that are contrary to facts, because you will never get the universe to change their facts. And when I can get the conversation to de-escalate to the point that they're willing to talk about values, what are my values, separate from what are the facts, then I've used that to have some very good conversations with people who we otherwise have very, very different viewpoints. As a matter of fact, it's the only way I've ever been able to do that. And it does seem to work, because then at least you can say, all right, we agree on these things, and now I understand why you disagree with the results, because you have some things that you value differently than I do. And usually it's around things like patriotism and religion and a few other things like that. But it takes the anger out of the conversation.
Yeah, I think in my experience, I've really found that if I want to have healthy conversations with people that are going to be extensive and in-depth, it's useful to separate values and facts. And kind of talk about both of them as Randy is talking about. If my purpose is simply to focus on promoting the pro-truth pledge and getting the maximum number of signatures and people engaged, I would do what Gary's talking about and focus on, hey, we're just here about the facts. Let's just agree on the facts. That's what the pro-truth pledge is about. So it's a sort of an ROI, return on investment. In my experience, the best return on investment, if you want to have as many conversations as possible and get as many people signed up as possible, which is an important aspiration of the pro-truth pledge, is to focus on what Gary is talking about and say, we're here to talk about what are the facts, and let's agree that everything, let's agree that it's 70 degrees outside. We're not going to talk about their interpretations. That's not part of what the pro-truth pledge is about. So from just an effectiveness perspective and limited resource perspective, that has been my experience. Cool. Okay. So at this point, I think we should, yes, Alex says that there is a good book, Difficult Conversations, that can be used to talk about this. Now, at this point, I think we should turn to the next point in the agenda, which is talking about fundraising. So raising funding for the first part of the strategic plan. And the main part of that, the main aspiration of that first part of the strategic plan is for media attention. So a number of people on this phone call, including myself, Agnes, Bentley, and Gary, have been involved in a strategic, and Randy has been also involved, thank you, has been involved in a strategic planning process that has determined that our best shot at using money to have the pro-truth pledge make a difference in the 2018 elections is through getting media publicity. So major media publicity on television, venues like CNN, NBC, CBS, and so on, all of these sorts of stations. So we've already separately talked about what we're doing in terms of volunteer time. So the Political Targeting Committee, the Political Cultivation Committee, the Business Outreach Committee, and the Personal Outreach Committee. Those are all groups that are targeting specific individuals and trying to get them to use the pledge effectively.
And if I may just clarify, to add to what Gleb is saying, we were, the reason we were, the original question of the Pro-Truth Pledge strategic planning process, which we did in December and January, was looking at the current number of signatures, which was at that time 5,200, which we achieved since March 2017, and thinking that if we continue at this rate, how many would we have by the midterm election? We might have 10,000 at the most. And is that enough to make a difference in the midterm elections? And we decided that it's just not going to be enough to really move the needle on the conversation in this country and in society, and in other countries clearly as well. So we asked ourselves the question: how do we get to 20,000 signatures, to 50 to 100,000 signatures by November 2018 election? And from there is kind of what Gleb is talking about, just to kind of put that in perspective, that it's not just, oh, it would be nice to get on CNN. Like, we're doing as much as we can, and if we don't have some kind of a big breakthrough, we're not going to fulfill the potential of this project. And many of us feel and know that it can do great things. And if we just keep doing what we're doing, we're going to get where we're going. And that's going to be only about 10,000 signatures by election day. And we were looking at how we can get 20, how we can get 50 and 100. So this is about funding the strategies to make that happen, which will be change from what we've been doing.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. It was helpful. So yes, and we've determined that media publicity is really important. So getting publicity in the media is going to be really crucial. And we've gotten, as I mentioned, some good publicity in some venues, but the main thing that we haven't been able to achieve is national television exposure. As I mentioned, those big time programs. So we've been trying to do that for a number of months already to get on those programs without success, although we've been successful with other sorts of venues. So we haven't had success, partially, as we later found out from research, that that community to get on TV takes strong connections. And connections require a publicist, professional hired publicist. And so we've been looking for a publicist. We found a publicist with the help of Ethan Behrman. Ethan Behrman is one of our highest profile pledge takers. He's the number 57 rated talk show host in the United States. And he's been on CNN and Fox a number of times, a whole bunch of times actually. And so he used a publicist to do so. So he has to get a publicist. And so he gave us the reference to his publicist, and that publicist has a minimum contract of 3 months for $5,000 each month, so $15,000, which is quite reasonable in terms of having the publicist needs sufficient time to get our name in front of those people, to get our name in front of producers. So right now, our focus is how do we fundraise that $15,000
on top of our existing expenses. So that's about just under like 40% of our budget, of our annual budget. Our annual expenses for the entire Intentional Insights is about $42,000 per year, and we don't have any.
35,000 or something.
We don't have any full-time staff right now. We're kind of
Yeah, so.
a bit of a shoestring situation. So this is $15,000 on top of that we need to pay within 3 months for this 3-month contract. But like Gleb said, it's a very high likelihood that this will be like effective. It's a very experienced publicist who has connections with all sorts of TV stations, you name it. So.
And the nice thing is,
very, very excellent reputation and excellent track record.
The nice thing is, if we are able to raise this money, we will, and succeed in getting the publicist, we will get a lot more potential donors because people will sign the Pro-Truth Pledge, and then they will be willing to donate. If they see us on CNN, they go to Pro-Truth Pledge, they sign it, they'll be willing to donate. So that's where we are right now, and looking for thoughts, advice, and feedback about strategy, how to fundraise this money, what to do. Welcome everyone to give your thoughts and feedback.
I had an experience that's a little bit of a segue because it's about media exposure, not about fundraising. Is it okay to talk about that now, or do you want to wait?
If you make a brief comment, we can deal with it, but I do want to focus on fundraising.
Okay, I can wait.
Okay, cool. Stephanie Frizzell suggested car wash with men in bikinis. I wish that was possible.
I think they might charge us.
I don't think we have enough good-looking men.
Wait a minute.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Gary's volunteering.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Gary, at your place. We're going over here
Gary's
over to your
volunteering.
place.
Instead of a six-pack, I have a keg.
Bentley's coming to town next month. You can have a Columbus car wash. Wash off the ice and gross off your car. When was the last time one of those raised $15,000? Randy.
That's
Not that I actually want to go parading around in a mankini. Although a wrestling singlet isn't far off.
That's funny. That's good.
It's a very practical uniform.
Excellent.
Wrestling.
Have to keep that in mind.
Practical. Next time you wrestle.
Yes, it's really hard to catch anything in it accidentally. It's not going to get twisted up on you, and it's going to stay covering you.
That's very important.
That is important.
Well, unless you're going to go to the Greek model, but I don't think we're going to do that anytime soon.
Not
Unless we're really desperate for $15,000. Oh my God, it's being recorded.
Not unless we, are willing to not be shown on, it'll be NC-17. NC-17.
You really don't want that to be your into CNN because the publicist is like, great, I'm going to get you on everything because these,
I don't think CNN is allowed to show that. They'll have to blur things out.
Where were we with our conversation? Anyways?
Yes.
Do we know, or do we have an estimated return on investment with the whole broadcasting beyond television thing?
So we don't have a return. How do I say this? We have anticipated. We think that this is the best of all options, and there are no other options that we see currently that would actually result in the outcome that we want. So all the other options of using money would not actually result in us getting significantly more than, our anticipated, whatever it is, 8,000 signatures if we currently go at the rate that we're going. So if we go at the rate that we're going, we're going to hit about 8,000 signatures by November 2018.
Oh, right. It's just I think you mentioned fundraising as well. So do we have any sort of bounds on how many like recurring donations or one-time donations we think will result from that?
I think that will depend on how many people sign up. So that's kind of a question of uncertainty. We know that this seems to be the only path that we have of all available to achieve a potential goal of having a large number of people sign the pro-truth pledge by the November 2020 elections, in order to encourage a large number of candidates to sign up as a consequence of private citizens signing up. So, of all of the options that we see, this seems the best available, and we don't see any other potential options. Now, if a large number of people sign up, then of course there's a large number of them, a certain proportion will give donations. We have experience of people giving donations after they sign the pro-truth pledge. So if we have a large number of people signing the pro-truth pledge, they'll of course give donations. So that we're not too worried about.
Yeah, I would also say that part of it is like, how much money might we raise from the people who signed? But I think that's not the number one thing I would say return on investment that we want, because being that this is a nonprofit mission-driven project, and it's a nonprofit organization, it's a nonprofit project, like our goal is to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so our goal is not like to sell widgets and do something to get more money, because this is not a money-making enterprise. So we're just like, how can we make the most impact?
Mm-hmm.
And especially having just volunteers doing just about everything in the organization, is just hard to get a good push for things. So like, if we had to put our money on one thing like this, we can't think of a better thing to take a risk with. And so getting this number of like tens of thousands of signatures, getting politicians signed up, because that's the impact of PTP, the Pro-Truth Pledge, making a difference and people focusing on the facts. So having this social impact is what we're looking at.
Well, right, of course, that's the main goal, but an instrumental goal for that would be maybe to make money with this particular risk, because that lowers the risk if we're expecting it to pay for itself a bit, as opposed to...
we are, no, definitely.
That's a good point.
It's a good point, and we are expecting it to end up paying for itself. So what usually happens is that people sign the pro-truth pledge, some of them choose to get involved. Of those people who choose to get involved, a number of them donate. That's kind of the typical process that people go through. So we can definitely, based on past history, have a clear expectation that a number of people who signed up, a certain proportion of them will donate. So it will eventually pay for itself from a business perspective. Want to briefly respond to Rachel's comment that what if I did a seminar on how to persuade people who hold a different point of view? That's not that's the kind of thing that we do for nonprofit reasons, for free, and we have done seminars like that. There was one that we did called Leading People to Accept the Facts. So it really wouldn't be aligned with our mission to do a seminar and sell it to people. Now we can do presentations to businesses and specific businesses and have them pay us money for that, but it would take years to develop that sort of business model, and that's not so it's kind of a for-profit venture, it's not a non-profit venture. So what we are tentatively planning to do, and what we're in the process of doing right now, is going to individual donors and asking them for money for this project, and then we are intending to launch a public fundraising campaign after getting some initial donations. So that's our tentative plan right now, and hopefully we're able to raise, at least half of this money from private donations, not private donations, but individual conversations with donors, and then hopefully the larger audience of Intentional Insights and the Pro Truth Pledge will be able to provide the other half. That's kind of what we're tentatively thought about, and that's where we are right now. That's what we're thinking. Again, our thoughts, comments are welcome. In the chat or in here. If not, I'll count back from 5. And again, comments welcome. 5, 4.
I got a question, Gleb.
Yes, Gary.
Are there any groups, whose hairs, they're passionate about the Pro Truth Pledge, where, you could do, $1, $5, what we see with politicians a lot? Is there any identifiable market segment that feels the Pro Truth Pledge is valuable?
It would only be people who already took the Pro Truth Pledge. So that's kind of what we're talking about. Our first request of people whenever we go anywhere is to take the Pro Truth Pledge, and that should be the main request. So that's the main thing we want them to do. After they take the Pro Truth Pledge, we can ask them to donate or volunteer.
Okay.
Rachel asked, trying to get attention for the pledge through something crazy like the Ice Bucket Challenge.
As someone, I've been in a nonprofit career since 2001, and one of the biggest things was the Ice Bucket Challenge, and there were all these memes going around fundraising professionals, where everyone wishes they thought of that first. I don't know if everyone people know what the Ice Bucket Challenge is. It's like a weird thing that you do this weird stunt on social media and you donate. So everyone just wanted to have a video of them doing this crazy stunt of pouring a bucket of ice on themselves. And they raised millions of dollars. So if we can think of something, I would do it myself.
Do you want to take? Brandon says he would. I would welcome brainstorming around this topic of who would be interested in a group devoted to brainstorming crazy ideas that might work, similar to the Ice Bucket Challenge. Please chat in the chat and self-identify if you're interested in being part of a group that's brainstorming this sort of stuff.
I'll lead the group. Because I'll be the first one to do this crazy idea. I would even jump into ice. I hate it. And
Agnes
I have social anxiety and mental illness. I will do it.
Okay.
Rachel Hunt. Stephanie, yes or no? I can't see.
All right. Other thoughts and comments? I'll count back from 5. 5, 4. Okay. I'm guessing Stephanie's into 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you all. This has been another Intentional Insights open board meeting. Really appreciate you attending, and we'll see you later with the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The next one should be
in April.
Will be in April, because we'll have a board retreat before then. So we'll have a retreat for the board, so we won't have one in March. Just let you know. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Take care.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody. Bye.